Hello, friends. My name is Ankit Gupta, and I have been working in the digital economy for more than 13 years now. I would like to express my gratitude to T Hub for inviting me and giving this opportunity to share my views on innovation in the time of crisis. Currently, I work with an Indonesian super app called Gojek, and specifically in their FinTech arm, GoPay, as Vice President and Head of Growth. Before Gojek, I was working with Myntra and led growth products. Personally, I strongly believe future is more digital and focus will remain on how technology solves customer problems. Technology and internet connected devices will become the central part of our lives and how we live our lives in future. In this podcast, I will share my specific knowledge on how my current and the last organization used innovation as a technique to tackle the recent crisis of coronavirus pandemic. During the podcast, I will use the problem first approach and start to explain the problem and then add some colors to the problem like why it was important and then talk about specific solution on how the organization handled the situation. Briefly, I will also talk about the long-term innovation strategies adopted by organizations specifically give some examples from a recent book I was reading, and this will be more long-term strategy, which is applicable in all the situations, not just the current situation. Okay, so let's start with understanding what exactly is innovation. So, as per the bookish definition, innovation is commonly defined as carrying out of new combinations that include introduction of new goods, new methods of production, the opening of new markets, the conquest of new sources of supply, or how to solve customer demand. So that's a very bookish definition, which you can find in Wikipedia. But in short, innovation is a technique or tool adopted by organization or a person to solve a specific challenge. Now, about my experience, so I was still in Myntra as the recent crisis unfolded, and suddenly companies became aware of the deep effects of coronavirus situation. Initially, no one took it very seriously. I'm talking about somewhere around January as the news started to come in, and slowly the situation started to become more serious when we saw those horrific images from Italy and other parts of Europe. So at that time, companies were still not sure how what will be the impact and how they will handle. And as the government enforced lockdown, companies faced their first challenge. The first and biggest challenge was as we entered into lockdown, how will the organizations manage their employees? How will they handle their operations? If they are not coming to offices, will they be still as productive as they were in office spaces? How will organizations run their day-to-day businesses? Some organizations like banks, um, news, press, etc., were like mandatory. Similarly, stock markets, people really had to go there, and while other organizations were still in a mode of learning how to handle the situation. And this is very tricky situation. If you see, most of people like me with a decade of experience, we have never been in a situation when we were not asked to come to office, right? And even for organization, they most leaders have never experienced something like this. But organizations evolved themselves to handle this tricky situation. So the first innovation or solution deployed by employees and companies was to learn how to work remotely. This is no small change for most of our professionals have been groomed into working in office spaces with clearly designated desks which they call as their workstations. Now, companies and professionals learned how to stay indoors and still continue to contribute meaningfully to their roles. Companies supported every employee with work from home benefits as well. So, for example, after a few months of working in lockdown, companies start to give reimbursements like for good internet connection. Com People who did not have their own laptops, companies started to ship them so that they can work from home. They also provided internet dongles and connected devices so that they can talk to their colleagues and be productive from home. So all these things slowly and gradually came into picture. Some companies went a little, let's say, even extra mile, and they reimbursed for good quality headphones and good quality chairs. So some of the organizations, like my current organization, also gave some one-time grant so that people can set up their home office. Over a period of time, as things passed, after 5 or 6 months, and when people and especially employees were facing a lot of fatigue, um companies also started to give them emotional and psychological support. A lot of organizations provided support for counseling. They also provided uh, rejuvenation leaves, like once a month you will have no work day, so you can completely be off from office. Similarly, some other companies also provided support in having no meetings day. Luckily, my organization, they gave no meetings day as well as holidays each month. So I would call myself lucky. Moving on to the second challenge. So I think the second biggest challenge which I saw in my tenure at Myntra was how to keep the users engaged, right? So during the pandemic, people had a lot of free time, and a lot of those that time was going on internet, whether it was towards specifically on game, reading more news, or watching more TV serials. But a lot of the time was going on internet. Specifically, if I talk about e-commerce, a lot more users were spending time on browsing. But the problem was they can't purchase, right? So everything was closed at that time. They can browse, they can select, but unfortunately, we were not able to service the demand. Uh, Everything stopped, right? All the logistics movement was stopped. So that's the key challenge for the organization was how to engage with those customers. Those customers are coming, they have an intent, and we do not want to lose the opportunity, right? We do not want to not be in a situation not to fulfill their demand. So a lot of companies made some small changes in their interfaces. So for example, my team personally built some small games uh, which built that kind of habit. So users will come to the app every day, and they will get like a cookie or a scratch card which they can use, and when they scratch it, they earn something. So it creates that sense of achievement, and they have something which they get back. Even if they don't get the product, they get a coupon or they get a reward, which is something which they can utilize whenever shopping starts in future. Some other organizations also use this time to introduce new features like short video uh, platforms. So, for example, Flipkart started a platform where people can go and watch short videos and use those videos to know more about products. Similarly, some other companies use some other tactics to engage with these customers so that those customers don't feel that they don't have enough to do on their app, right? Because they can't shop, but they can still spend that time on the app by reading something or consuming a video content so that they still remain with the company. So that was the second challenge. And my previous company, Myntra and Flipkart, both tackled it really well by creating some video snippets as well as some kind of content and some games to engage with the customers who are coming to our platform. Moving on. So third challenge was, let's say, as the lockdown was partially lifted, and all the online companies, including education tech companies, they had acquired a lot of users, right? So a lot of new users came into the system, but they never had experience of online commerce before, or interacting with apps or websites earlier. Most of these new users were coming from smaller cities and towns, and for most of them, the 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 most common internet interaction was social apps like Instagram, Facebooks, or apps like TikTok, where the interaction was visually very different from traditional e-commerce or education tech site. If you see their UX, they're defined very differently. That was the second biggest challenge. How do you cater to needs of those specific users who are coming from smaller cities, and for them, this new experience of buying something or learning something on app was totally new or alien, right? And typically those users are not very internet savvy. Their education level uh, may not be as high as what you see in tier one cities. So we acquired a lot of users and we had to solve their needs in a very different way. So what did the companies do? So the first tactic, companies launched vernacular content and ability to shop or learn in their preferred language. If you see, a lot of organizations in the last 6 months have launched vernacular shopping experiences. Both Amazon, Flipkart, even OLX now have offering their app in their local language. Some of the companies also start to offer the search in the local language so that people can navigate differently.